Dear respected Thai, dear beloved community, thank you for being here this afternoon. The sun came out and I saw the monks, some of the nuns, and picking mulberries from the tree and sitting by the pond with the lotus leaves, quite large, from all the rain and mud. And it just made me think of the first gift that King Bimbisara offered to the Buddha, the bamboo grove in near Vulture's Peak, near Rajgir. Has anyone had a chance to visit that in India, the bamboo grove? A few of us, yeah. If you had a chance, very beautiful. Still a beautiful park, and we have this bamboo grove and mulberry trees as a land, a kind of Buddha land for us to enjoy. And these picnic lunches touch that seed in me of the beauty of the Dhamma. It is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful at the end. And seeing some children playing, people here and there sharing about their life, their practice, meeting people, meeting brothers and sisters in the Dhamma is so beautiful. We don't need very much to feel joyful. So we're gathered here this afternoon for the first of kind of called panel presentations, but it's going to be a little bit more like a talk show style. So I think it's a bit more interesting. We have three of our Dhamma teachers from different parts of the world who I'll invite to come up here and share a little bit about their life, their practice, and how they are Thai's continuation. Because we are all realizing Thai's continuation, Thai's dream of building the beloved community. It's also the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King in America. And when Thai had a chance to know him, he spoke, Dr. King spoke about building the beloved community across international boundaries, across races and cultures. And Thai took it as his mission and path when he heard about Dr. King's assassination to continue to build that, to realize that dream, building the beloved community. And it's very easy to see. We are all a fruit of that, of Thai's work and Sister Shan Kong's work and many of our elder brothers and sisters, both lay and monastic. And so I'd like us to open our heart and open our mind and just get to know our Dhamma teachers. I think it's really beautiful. I love getting to know all the wonderful lay Dhamma teachers in our community. I love getting to know my monastic elder brothers and sisters too more. But I have the good opportunity to live with them, so we have more time to play together and work together. So the other day, I had a chance to sit with the three teachers that will come up. They are just, like the Buddha said, just some of the leaves in the grand forest of the Dhamma that are the teaching community of our Plum Village Sangha. We try to pick from somebody who's active here in Europe, another teacher in the Middle East, and one teacher who's active in Asia. So it's a little bit to see how the Dhamma is flowering. The Dhamma of Plum Village is flowering in many different quarters of the world. And I love to just hear about what people are doing to continue Thai in the context where they find themselves, in the community, in the culture. Because we will hear today about many different contexts. And some may be very challenging, but very fruitful as well. Because we always know that where there's suffering, there's also happiness. They are like two sides of a coin. So I'd like to start by inviting Adriana to come up, if you don't mind. Adriana Rocco is been a Dhamma teacher since 2004, and from the Italy Sangha. And we've also got to know each other quite a bit over the past few years. One year I had a chance to organize a tour in Italy, and so I got to work with Adriana, and we had with the public talk, I think, in Rome. I remember sitting you took me out for ice cream, gelato. And you shared with me many things about your life, and I thought, wow, it's so fascinating. So maybe you could start, Adriana, just to share a little bit about your spiritual path and how you came to the Plum Village practice.
Let's breathe together. You know, the first word that comes to my mind and mouth and my heart is saying thanks, you know. Gratitude. This place is my home also, since many years. And in this very moment, I feel Thai, I feel Sister Chan Kong at my side, and I feel that really Plum Village is blooming really like a lotus on a sea of fire. Because Plum Village is really a lotus, is a wonderful flower, which not only comes from Vietnam War, suffering, and love that I was able to generate during the war, but the sea of fire, as I see it, and I live it as a person, a human in this moment, is everywhere. So I see that the world is on fire, that there is so much confusion, so much suffering, and there is the lotus. So I thank all the Plum Village Sangha, all of you, because I can see how the lotus is able to continue to flourish and generate more flowers. And it is really a gift for mankind. Thank you to all the monastics who are here. And thank you, of course, to all the lay people who contribute, because it is clear to me in this moment in life that we need each other. That exactly this is because that is. And monastics need the presence of lay people to be in touch with life in a more complete sense. And we lay people need the monastics to feel the support, to feel that we really can make it, you know, that Mother Earth can be sustained. So this morning, the brother Phap Kam, who is an old friend also, he was telling that we are the sum of our actions. And sitting in this very moment here in front of you, I can say that I am already an ancestor. And I am, in a way, the evidence that there are many lives, many lives, that we can be reborn every moment. I can really tell you it is true. I'm not talking about reincarnation, but rebirth is different. Thai has given wonderful teachings about rebirth, you know, just with the teapot and making us see how, you know, these tea leaves become with water become tea, and they renew themselves every time we put some more water, and then the tea goes inside of us, and then my speech at the moment, is helped by that water, And so, yes, I am an ancestor. It is true, well, you can see it is visible. And I have lived really many lives. It is amazing. Since Brother Faplu invited some of us the other day to come up, and he said, give some background, He told me, tell something about your life. And so suddenly I saw all these lives, so many. Oh, really? Well, I could really spend many, many hours. And they all have to do with war and peace together. I was born actually during World War II, It has been a very serious war in Europe, in Italy. I am from Naples. There the war was really terrible, bombing and destroying. And my father and mother had 4 children. It was 1941. They were a special couple because they met as cousins. They were son and daughter of 2 brothers, and they promised each other to live all their life together when they were 10 and 12 years old. So it's quite astonishing. And they went for more than 50 years together. So in 41, Mussolini, who is a friend of Hitler, makes a new regulation that all young men having 5 children are not forced to go to war. They can stay home. So it was very easy. My mother and father decided to have the 5th child. And here I am. And I was born, I'm quite naughty, so I play tricks. I was born on Christmas Day. And on the 5th of January, many Italian young men were forced to go to Africa, to Tunisia, I don't know, because Mussolini wants to conquer Africa. So they were living on a ship, and the ship was destroyed by bomb. Anyhow, they died, all of them. So I've been, through my very young years, always I was told that I had saved the life of my father. Well, it's quite a nice job, actually. And so I was brought up, and I went to a Christian school, just like Brother Fabkam was telling this morning. But then, when I was around 15, 16, I started to question certain things like original sin, which brings about this terrible thing which is called sense of guilt. And, things like that. Original sin, and you are a sinner, and there is only one God, and everybody has to recognize only that God, otherwise he will go to hell. So for me it was impossible, to... So I started to go my own way, searching. I cut it short because it's very long. So finally it came 1968. You know how many of you were already there in 1968 in Paris, revolution, students, university, everywhere. And our motto was, imagination au pouvoir. Imagination has to have the power, we must give power to imagination. So it was the beginning of an end of an era of rational people who know everything, and everything is only rational. Emotions have no right to exist. So young girls and women, they are emotional, they cry. A man should never cry, it's terrible things many of us already know very well. And so the revolution in Paris then of course, went to all Europe, and I went to a university to study social science, sociology in Trento, which is the north of Italy, and it was the most anti, so revolutionary faculty that you can imagine. We were able to stay there up to midnight at night. It was called the student movement. Anyhow, I cut it short. I found that no matter how right was the movement, there was a lot of violence in it. The values were really valuable, but the way they were presented was very violent. And then it happened after 4 years that I had the great gift to become a mother. So that was a new revolution, an inner revolution. Because suddenly I touched one very, very deep reality. Children are very creative, they know, they feel, but adults are a danger to children. They suffocate their creativity, always with this, no, no, yes, no, you have to. And being a revolutionary woman, I say, I really want to respect my child and all children. So I started a school in my house, 5th floor in Rome, without a lift. So I could be arrested because you cannot bring children 5th floor without a lift, But okay, I did it, and it worked very well. Very many people would come and take their children back home and say, but she must be a little stupid, because she spends a life with children. She's a sociologist, Marx and Freud, all this knowledge, and it is just, wasted playing with children. And it was very, very funny for me, because I said one day, okay, they will see, doesn't matter. And there was so much misunderstanding around me at that time. There was a divorce, referendum, everything seemed very new. But in fact, I still found very violent, around. No values, really, deep values. Especially the sacredness of children, mothers, fathers, and life. So really deep respect for life was missing. So somebody whispered at my ear, a very close friend, you should go to India, because what you're looking for here is there since many, many, many millennia. So in 2 years, it was not easy, but I left. I went to India with my daughter. My marriage was already shaking, we were too independent, both of us. So anyhow, it was the right way to go. And so we went, myself and my daughter, 6 years old. I'm still there, actually. And I discovered, that since millennia, human beings have never forgotten that life is sacred. That there is not need, that we have to fight to state it. Simply have to acknowledge and to live according to that feeling. I went there, to study with a teacher that somebody had recommended me, and he was the right teacher because he was himself the instructor of Krishnamurti, who is a very famous teacher. But especially he told me 3 very important things at the very beginning. What you can learn here has a meaning only if it makes you more sensitive to life. So sensitive to life means to yourself, to your body. But in India, body is not say, muscles and bones. When we say body there, we mean many, many levels of being, including spirit, including emotions and mind and your past experience, your education. Everything is body. There are many layers. And the second teaching was you will learn how to recognize your priorities in life, what is essential in life, in your life. Not in my life, because I am your teacher, in your life. And third lesson, remember, your first teacher is your daughter. So there was an incredible peace in me with this little girl who could really enjoy the beauty of India. We were living in a special place in the Theosophical Society. And so she was very independent, talking to theosophists, and I myself going to library and studying, but especially having this experience that mind can be a monkey. You know, in India they say it, our mind is like a monkey jumping from one branch to the other, and a Scorpio has bite, with the bite of a Scorpio, and it is even drunk. So that is the mind. And I must say it is true, at least for me. And at the same time, I was told that same mind can become a very, very peaceful mind that really is able to see, to recognize, to understand, and therefore, this is what Thai is adding to me, to love. So, okay, so I spent the first 2 years, and then for over 20 years I went back and forth, because finally I'd found my life, what I wanted to do when I was an adult. So I started, slowly, passing over to people who were just around looking for me somewhere where I was living. I never put my name on my door. I was always living in the countryside. But I knew that people, they knock at your door when it is the time. You don't have to make publicity. You understand? And there was no email at that time, no. So it was very simple. So one person comes, and then I go back to India, so back and forth. And so slowly, I learned myself how to approach everybody as a very unique, special human being. So that now when I see a group of humans in front of me, I know that everybody is a treasure. Everybody has a special way of looking at me even in this moment. Everybody has a different understanding of these words. Everybody has a different vision and aspiration. And so this brings in me a great easiness in a way, because we are humans. And what can we do if not to be beneficial to each other? I mean, all the rest is really a waste of time. And so. Then in 92, I cut it short, brother, don't worry.
So when did you meet Thai in the community?
So in 92, finally I meet Thai. And since then, I've never left, and I'm here. Okay, I've cut it short.
So I think those of us who've been around Adriana, we love so much your liveliness, your light, very. Always very alive and present to the moment. So I'd like to ask, Thai taught us to practice mindfulness as a path and not as a tool. So I know that you do a lot of work with children still, with the children's retreat and family retreat in the countryside in Italy, and your daughter does hiking retreats, right? So how do you feel you realize that teaching of Thai in your way of sharing the practice? Right, in daily life, of living mindfulness as a path and not just as a...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The word mindfulness is quite recent, being used in the way that now has become a technique or something. I remember when I was in India, we used the word awareness, to be aware, to become aware, to be conscious, to be present. Okay, now it happens that the word mindfulness, especially in the English language, has come, to mean something very, something like a program, a protocol, or something, I don't know, something. And in Italian, the word consapevolezza is close to the original meaning smrti, which is the word in Sanskrit, because the native language of all this science is Sanskrit. So smrti actually means to remember, and in the Italian language, to remember is said ricordare, which comes from Latin and contains the root cord is the heart. It means bring back to your heart. And actually in the Chinese ideogram, mindfulness contains mind and heart together, presence of mind, heart. We cannot say the presence of mind. It doesn't mean it's heart, mind together that are present, because only heart can feel. Mind in the usual sense, how we use it in the West, thinks, okay? But here we feel. So mind, heart. Now, it happens that my first, I would say, a special real Sangha is my own family where I live with my daughter, her nice partner, husband, or whatever, because they didn't get married, so it is not a husband officially, but he is very important because they have together, two children. And I tell you, they come tomorrow. They will be here tomorrow. So they were born, we do everything at home, so they were born in the house, home birth. One is almost 12 and 7:30. And we are together. And I must say, they are my daily teachers. It's not easy to share a life in a wonderful place in the countryside, small house, but, with a daughter who is very tough. She's very tough. She's very clever, very independent, of course. And, and for her to have this mother, it's quite a burden in a way sometimes, And so I have decided the best thing is that I am the child and I am the student. So I learn lessons every day. And lessons from the adults, but wonderful lessons from my grandchildren. And this is not a metaphor, it is true. Because since they were born, when they've been, and crawling and, I've seen that really I had not understood one thing about children, although I had done a lot before. Because children have a kind of sensitivity. They have an intelligence which goes through the senses, which is really amazing. You don't need to say anything. They feel. They feel your inner state. You feel if you are really there or not, if you agree or not, if you are happy or if you're tired, if you are irritated, whatever it is, they feel it. And it goes back to you, So it is really a daily adventure in adjusting, as far as I'm concerned, all these 12 last years. Now, then there is a larger Sangha, which I would say, I call it my planetary Sangha. I like to exaggerate. Because I feel at the moment, wherever I go, that Thai teaching or Indian wisdom or however we want to call it, is more than needed, It's a question of life and death, There's so much confusion, so much violence, so much ignorance in the mind of humans at the moment. Mother Earth is suffering. Families are suffering. Parents go back home and they are very tired they are not really able to cope with this life energy of children. And in school, poor teachers, they arrive in the morning and they are parents or what they are, and they have to cope with so many things in school. So wherever I look around, I see that the only thing to do is to transmit, with a regard, say with the eyesight, with a word, I don't know, something that gives a trust, that gives kind of inspiration. So yes, of course, every month I offer a mindfulness day where I live in the countryside near Firenze in Italy. So people come and join in the mindfulness day. Then I offer retreats very often, at least once a month in 2, 3 days, 4 days. And I choose very special places, Christian hermitage or monasteries in Italy. Because in my country we have a very long-standing tradition, of monasteries and places. And it is a way of relating to our past, to accepting, being grateful, because these places are all positioned in beautiful, beautiful landscapes. And also it's a way of, in a way, people coming and they discover that they don't need to become Buddhist. You forgive me for what I say now, because the Buddha was not a Buddhist. And so they discover they can just be what they are, and actually is the deepest recommendation given by Thay. Don't become anything else but a better human being where you are. That's all. So a better Christian, a better atheist, a better housewife, a better what you are. Just you improve your way of being in life where you are. I think I should stop.
So I think what we'll do is maybe we'll invite Baruch to come up, and then after we have a chance to. But please stay here, and maybe Baruch, are you there? So I introduce Baruch Shalev, yeah, from Israel, from Jerusalem, and he's been a OI since 2002. And became a Dhamma teacher in 2011, or maybe 2010, 2011. And he and his wife have been very active in the generating peace and happiness in a very difficult context, in the ongoing conflicts in Israel, in Palestine, and how to bring harmony and reconciliation. So maybe we can listen to a sound of the bell, and then I'll invite him to share a little bit about his story and his path of coming to the practice.
Dear ancestors, dear Thay, dear beloved community, dear sisters and brothers. Yes, I also miss Thay and Shangkung in this room right now. And at the same time, I feel that we received such a big present that if we know how to appreciate it and what it means, I'm confident that it will carry us to a better future, not only to happiness and peace in myself and peace in my community, but it's really something of interbeing for our entire planet. At these challenging times where here and there we are separated, maybe I will relate to some personal stories from me, what's connected to what was mentioned here, that this present moment of mindfulness has the consequence for our next step, just as the way as our past, other wars, the war in Vietnam, the establishment of the OI can lead to also other future steps. And I want to talk a bit about my early childhood because that's always very relevant. But in this context, and I feel we are all really one small village, listening to my dear sister. Yes. But I will start when I was around 20 years old and living in Israel. And it was different than today. There was no television, and I, coming with roots from other places, I will mention soon, but still being Jewish, I felt, I was torn. I felt like being a pacifist, but I felt that I have to serve because of what happened and no safe haven for the Jewish people when they didn't have for 1,000 years country, so they have to come back, and that's the way we were brought up. Well, now we discover that there is no less safer place than that region. But I start maybe with my grandfather, that I am named after him. It's funny how this early childhood and also stories that we are told or we tell to ourselves, they have also some kind of give direction. Like what I say, this energy to the next energy. And I was born in a God-forgotten, beautiful, beautiful countryside in a place called Seke Udvarhei. And what's interesting about this place, besides that the nature was most beautiful, it reminds me of your area where we provided a wedding for volunteers from Palestine in near Firenze. So beautiful like Switzerland, and the population are really like indigenous people, that they stayed there maybe from the time that from Asia the attacks came to Europe, long time ago. But they really preserved their culture, their beautiful music, and their customs, and the way they were dressing and everything. There was something of Sangha about them. But they were a minority because this was in Romania. So they were really suppressed. And of course, we as Jews were a minority and suppressed. But the interesting thing for me to find out later, that my grandfather, that I'm called after him, Baruch, he was a spiritual leader living in the villages, studying the whole day, meditating in the woods, and making a lot of money with effortlessly. And the interesting thing is that at some point when he moved to this city where I was born, the villagers came down from the mountains, and a gathering of 2,000 people, all the houses around, they had a meeting, and they had a ceremony of their ancestors swearing that they are going to save my grandfather and his family. And I was very touched by this. When they came to a delegation of the leadership, so now like the elders came to him, and they told him, the Germans are going to come, and they are going to kill all the Jewish people, and we decided to save your family. So I say, no, thank you. What has to happen? That's it. And I don't want to put you, to endanger you. They say, but you know, there is no road to us. We are in the mountains. I said, well, it's enough that one German will come by mistake, one jeep, and you will be all killed, out of question. And my grandfather died peacefully just the day before all the others were deported, including my father and his son at the time just finished Academy of Art. He was a sculpture artist with foot like this, you know. His children are my age. I'm uncle since they were born. From the day they were born, I'm an uncle to them. So anyway, this sensitive boy that was studying in Budapest when they were throwing people down from the train, he spoke beautiful German, so did my father, and he was quoting poems in German to me. And you know, what I want to stress at this point, that when other energy started, leaders that inside who can take responsibility, but they divide, this lay ground for other conditions and for wars. And that's actually the opposite what I did, bringing along the word interbeing. And at the moment, you know, I'm very careful to mention it, in our sanghas, and I have 4 sanghas every week among other activities, is in Jerusalem we have a Wednesday regular sangha. But when we have such news and so much tension and excitement, and the feeling that we are between the 2 world wars, and you cannot, and very centralized media, and interest, economic and other, for war and violence, and it's not what the people want. Actually, half the people want something else. The same with the Palestinians. It's all conditions and circumstances. Yesterday I heard a story from people from Vietnam, just something small, but it's eye-opening. An innocent Vietnamese friend went to a place where was written, you know, pagoda, where you can pray, assumedly. But there was a notice outside, children are not allowed to run here. So he went inside to pay respect. And he was told by the police, what are you doing here? Don't you see the sign? He said, well, I'm not a child and I'm not running. But when you get to this situation of this fear, that the half of the people who are the academy, like in our country, and I'm loyal to my country, but as friends, we have to be mirrors and say the truth, also to the politicians, with loving letters, but yes, to say the truth. And ask ourselves, first of all, is it real? Is it true? All the time. You see, it's like, I remember, I think Tayo, another teacher was telling this story about the frog in France. When you prepare a meal with frog, you put the frog in the water, and the frog is very comfortable when the water is being heated up. But then comes the stage, it's too late to jump out. And this is where our responsibility comes in, wherever we are. Because, you know, for me, once the word interbeing was a little bit abstract. Because at that time I was advising to politicians and sitting in cabinet meetings and so on, and everything around me was different, the way of thinking. Myself, I did feel obliged and caring about the people who are suffering, since I remember myself as a child. Because, first of all, as a minority, you are a refugee, as a Jew, and then you are a minority. I saw the treatment, how these Hungarians were treated as, you know, as a minority, as if they are refugees in the place where they were born and lived there for hundreds of years, and taking their language away. And I'm talking about Germany because, you see, it's so heartwarming to see when a place is healed, transformed. To go and visit in Eyab, and to see the transformation of energy after I visited there. Sheila and I were there when Sister Chanduk had a training for lay teachers training less than a month ago. And I could feel what it was once and feel the energies now. But for me, it was I just mentioned that you can imagine that if my father, that was in camps in Auschwitz and others, he was a strong physical man, and to be with these artist youngsters. So I can imagine that he had to do his work physically, to dig for him, and to save a bite of bread for him and so on. This is not human conditions. When I think of the civil war in Vietnam, brother with brother, this is our responsibility to prevent, because we have the best tools, we got the best presents. When I came here, I felt I'm really home. And what impressed me about Thai, you know what, I tell you a secret. I first of all, I'm a social worker, and I'm an historian also. So I was doing all these things, and I'm a revolutionary. So with social workers, I did kind of revolutions. But I was a continuous studying all the years. Thanks to Sheila, that became 1 year before me, a Dharma teacher, who is from Ireland. So I feel also I have many roots. And what I wanted to say that I was studying philosophy, and some of my teachers were hoping that I will be their continuation. But what I did understand, that I have to wipe out the data, all the charts that I wrote, and I accumulated so much knowledge. So some of these things are very important. How can a democracy become a tyranny, or how can a tyranny can be transformed to something else? To understand myself, my heart, my suffering, growing up with parents that were my father was around 60 years old at the time when I was born, very strong and giving me as much as his love as he could. But he himself grew as an orphan. And the anger and the silence, not talking about what really went on in the war, and the fragility of my mother that I sometimes felt, who also in Auschwitz, and most incredible, intelligent, warm-hearted woman. But really, I felt that I have to be the responsible adult while I didn't really have a childhood. And that accumulates a lot of anger, even if I wasn't aware of it at the time. Like I wasn't allowed to play outside with children ever, football or something like this. Yes, from age 4 I was studying violin with the best teacher and the best painter and very proper education. But that's not really childhood that any child would choose. So I want to mention the small details from Sister Chan Kung's book. She mentioned that in the Organization of Social Workers for Peace, there was a stage that the OI members, they arrested a few of them. And she was invited to denounce something in the radio, and it was clear that if she doesn't, they will all go to prison. And she initiated to go to the Minister of Education, if I'm not mistaken. And he demanded from her to make a certain statement. And she, with her loving speech, said, I remember, you were a teacher yourself. So would you like me to lie? And he was ashamed. And nowadays we have heads of state that they are personally not ashamed, and there is also no public shame. So we are playing breaking the rules of civilization, while we have the best of the tools. We know that peace begins with myself, that the Dharma begins with myself. And I was fortunate enough that for the first two decades, with all my curiosity, I have a childish curiosity. like you. But I never went to other retreats or other books, to learn it academically. Well, when we started to teach, Sheila and I thought, well, it's too much. Some people use other terminology. So we got into this also just to get to know, because we were training, for example, therapists that they come to learn mindfulness as a tool. But they get transformed also. And I see in the training that we did in East Jerusalem, Palestinians, Israelis, schoolmasters, religious leaders, they accept the mindfulness when they feel that we trust it and it's genuine and it's inclusive. I don't think it's a major problem. And the last thing about, I know your question, I want to mention about Thay, dear Thay, the vision he had when he started the School of Social Work, when he started the press, but I remember in the university. But he was given to build the university and surprise them that the university was ready in 1 year. What he asked is his community that had the political clout to demand not to have a war. He could foresee the future. So this energy that we build up, it has come up in the real time, before the frog is boiled, before it's too late. And for this, from what I saw also in cabinet and government meetings and so on, I see the wisdom in Sangha wisdom, in Sangha consultation. So, and we have a problem with identity. By the way, it's one of the main problems with the Israelis and the Palestinians. They are not sure of what's their identity, who they are, who we want to be. People with 2,000 years of all kinds of things that could be for their credit, like the Bible or the best food in the world. But, the Jews don't know what is Jewish. I didn't know either, because my father in the camp, he decided to be an atheist. And so, although he was finished to be trained as a rabbi also, but he never was, one day he wasn't the spiritual leader. This rootlessness ties also, so we are like trees. So I feel now rich with many roots. And we are partners in our roots. We see the interbeing between us, and we can check really what's real and what's true. And what was most real for me when I came here, it's, okay, Thay, I saw that he was one of the best academic, although he did it wasn't shown, no charters at the time. But I knew his knowledge is immense. I believe in ancient knowledge also. So we know a lot. But what caught me, that he's a poet, and he's modest, and he's teaching us to connect to our heart, and he's giving us, and now, I missed this part, but in my guts, I felt it all the time. That's why partly I wasn't curious to go anywhere else. That Thay provides us with the exact, like the original spirit and text of the Buddha. We are so fortunate to have that. So we don't need to do, to get the academic side to see, to argue, all these arguments. I left behind me all this. We have all the wisdom with the sisters and the nuns, and all of us. If we could just connect to it and trust and take our responsibilities as OI and the beloved family, that people will believe in love.
Thank you so much, Baruch. We'll continue the discussion. I feel very inspired to hear the story when you talked about your grandfather in Hungary, meditating in the forest and touching that root as a continuation. I wonder just if you would briefly share, because I think many of us in the Sangha, we've heard about the different Israeli-Palestinian retreats that have happened here in Plum Village, and I know that you and your wife and many others in the Sangha in Israel have been working in the background to make it possible for brothers and sisters to come every year and to do retreats both in Israel and in, you know, the occupied territories, in walking meditation. So I wonder if you just could share for the benefit of the Sangha a little bit, like what is happening now and what do you see flowering and fruiting in that space where there's so much conflict and misunderstanding.
Well,
and also, I know you don't like to boast about. You were telling me, oh, if I share, then it's like I'm saying, but it's really sharing on benefit as a voice for the Sangha there, in the Middle East.
so first of all, I am so glad that we have practitioners that they practice for 20 years in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv and in the north and in the south. And since our Sheila and my visit here, I think we have a day of mindfulness every month and a half. We have a wonderful OI. We have our sisters and brothers they play a very important role in tens of peace organizations. Like one of the sisters from Tel Aviv, she is the anchor of an organization dealing with the Bedouins in the south. Many of our sisters are the core of the organization Women Waging Peace. Our Jerusalem Sangha, we have two. One on Wednesday evening and one Sunday morning in English at 7:30 years. And it's just next to the Prime Minister's residence. So it's like, the distance is like from here to there, to after the hall. So you have to come into the Sangha, you have to come through the guards, and there is a gate for the cars. So the slogan is, if you ever want to come, is meditation, and the guards let you by. They change all the time, so I don't know if they know the meaning. Because so it's a little building of vegetarian, we pay rent in a vegetarian center. And so we sometimes we are proud. You see, there is no war because we come down. In our case, it's the Prime Minister, his wife, and his son. And so they said, "Well, this is the situation." So we say, can you imagine what would be the situation if we wouldn't be doing this? The war would have broken up a long time ago, and before we came, we also were in the verge of war. Anyway, so a lot is happening. We had a hunger strike of the women waging. It's all the women, and they didn't form really quite their ideology, but they are clear that must be peace negotiation. And they, as mothers and as wives to soldiers, they demand the negotiation. Well, so far in the last 2 years, they weren't answered, but it grew hundreds, it's growing hundreds and 100% all the time. So when we had the hunger strike, it was 50 days of hunger strike, reminiscence of the previous war in Gaza. And then, so we were providing the chairs anytime a member of parliament would come and so on, or media, so we take out the chairs from the Sangha and bring the logistics and so on. That really backed up the hunger strike. Well, you know that there is a BDS, a world BDS, so that says that Palestinians and Israelis cannot be together. Well, I can tell you that at least with the leadership of the peace camp, let's say the small leadership, we are in good contact with all the possible Palestinian leaders as well as the alternative leaders wherever the other alternatives will emerge. But even they are afraid to do this in public. So sometimes we meet a small forum in hotels, just like 7 from our side, 7 from their side. But the main thing is the civic society. And you know, today we were citing the 14 mindfulness training. And I'm sharing now another dilemma. You have to have open communication. I mean, how come that I can sit with as a social worker, I could sit on a rock with someone that everyone knows that is drug addicted and I would get him out of drug, but I cannot sit with a Palestinian or a Palestinian formally, I mean. And it goes, and I know it comes from people who want to help us. But I think that the help has to come with a lot of deep thinking and love and like support the sisters and brothers, for example, that they will come to Palestine or bringing people to other countries and so on. That's one thing. The other thing is that I myself am torn apart because I know also someone who was advising for ministers and sometimes prime minister, the prime minister on ecology. I already moved away from the politics. And the situation is that first of all, everyone needs some helping, showing the other side. Usually, you know, you don't have this luxury of people reflecting, mirroring, telling you the truth. Only good friends. And I see that any time a German politician, for example, that wants to give advice or help peace organizations or give advice to the Israeli government, they are immediately blamed for being anti-Semite. So here is where our voice also can be heard. And a third angle, you see, so I'm torn, I'm outside of the country, I don't want to criticize. But I'm saying the truth inside the country also, because it's very important. Titus call me by my true name. And in potential, we are all peacemakers and we are all something else. But I am sometimes in strange situation, like last week or 2 weeks ago was the Jerusalem Day. So I'm in the prison in Jerusalem every week for the past over 10 years. I volunteer, go to prison, teaching mindfulness. Somehow I do my best not to skip this time. So I was with Palestinian prisoners and telling them why they come from their ceremony. They had a ceremony. They had to be there for the celebrating Jerusalem Day. I mean, they see Jerusalem there and here, you know. No, we are losing our sensitivity. That's the situation of the frog. You lose also your sensitivity. So if I talk, then they won't allow me to teach another group. You know, I have to be careful. So I was just talking about Nelson Mandela, how when he was in prison, he felt free in his heart. And it's your time to change yourself, to prepare yourself, to find your true self. Not let people look at you, the uniform of prisoner, what you have, but find your true heart, who you really are, and who is a real leader, and so on. So the Sangha is doing a tremendous work. We are bringing that ingredient into many forums that let's leave our ego behind. Let's create consensus. And that's very important because you remember the way Tai shows the stick of the left and the right, cutting, you still are left with the fanatics of the edges. So our role is to see all sides and to take our responsibility. We have all our tools with the help of the monastics.
Thank you so much, Baruch.
Just one sentence.
Okay.
How things come together. A a short while ago, an organization that I'm the co-chairperson of it called Social Workers for Peace, together with a Palestinian friend that she's getting into the practice also. And so our organization, today with some Sangha members that are working in the Israel Museum, on the birthday of Martin Luther King, we celebrated the birthday of Martin Luther King in Israel Museum. It was wonderful. It's bigger than this hall, with a rug taken from Germany originally, past and present. And it was like for Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Thich Nhat Hanh. And it was led by Sheila, a walking meditation. And there were soldiers even in uniform there at the time, and everyone was so touched by this. When you see that it's real, genuine, people feel it. No need to market it even. Thank you.
We can, thank you. We'll listen to a sound of the bell, come back to our body and our breath. Let's enjoy being together here in a calm, safe place with the Sangha around us. I'd like to invite Kim Tan to come up. So I'd like to introduce Kim Tan. He's from Shah Alam in Malaysia. He's been practicing he first learned of Thai teaching in 2007, after many years of practicing, I think, transcendental meditation, which meditation had helped him a lot to relieve stress in his daily life, and as well as health difficulties, and then they started to practice, build a sangha in Shah Alam, and then the Thai and the sangha came. I remember I stayed in his house in 2010 with a few brothers and sisters when we visited Malaysia with Thai. And got to practice with your family, and now your son is a monk. Brother Dai Yung, if you know, I don't know is he here, Brother Dai Yung? Somewhere back there hiding. I don't know. I can't imagine the experience of having my father up there, and I am a monk. And Kim became a Dhamma teacher in 2014. And I remember I told them, I was very surprised when I went, because I had as a Westerner, I look and I see Zen is a tradition that grew up in China, and Kim is from a Chinese root in Malaysia. And so I think, if only I could be Chinese, then I could get, the real teachings of the Zen masters. And I was very surprised when I went to Kim's house and he was reading Western Dhamma teachers in English. And I said, yeah, and I said, but you can read the Chinese. And he said, but it's much clearer in English. So anyway, it's a funny story I remember from visiting. Sometimes we have perceptions about other cultures that are not necessarily correct. So I invite Kim to share a little bit about his spiritual path and how you met the community.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, dear beloved community, I was born in Malaysia, not in China. My parents, my dad is actually from China, but my mom is born in Malaysia. I grew up in a village, in a little village. which is a paddy planting village, and at the same time, it's also located at the seaside. So there is also a fishing village. And the time when my parents started their life there, it was a very difficult situation. That was during the Japanese occupation. So they went through a lot of hardship. Life was not easy. We see a lot of problems, even to find enough to eat. So very often they have to borrow. They have to borrow. And my parents, actually, they went through not only the hardship due to the material insufficiency, food and so on, but also, well, I think from the time my brothers, my sisters were born, already they're from the children, I think they suffer a lot. Especially because their first two children were not successful, right? And I can imagine from there they suffer a lot. And then because they listened to advice from friends, they adopted my elder sister. Then my eldest brother was born, and my eldest brother went through a lot of challenges in life as well, and at the end, he had a mental problem. And then my second brother, who was born and then had a high fever, and he turned deaf. Couldn't listen, couldn't speak. Well, okay, that. You know, when I was growing up from childhood, looking at the suffering they have gone through, and because of that, in a way, it created a lot of difficulties in the relationship between my mom, my father. So a lot of conflicts, a lot of quarreling, you know. During the years we were brought up. So now, when I look back, that I was born in that kind of environment, when I grow up, and I see there is a lot of difficulties in me. Right? And knowing that, knowing the challenges in me, I was trying to find ways of how I can improve myself. Right? I look around, participated in a lot of self-development program, even like Asia Works, right? And also spiritually, I was searching. I was studying in Australia, and at that time I had the opportunity to come across also Christianity. I tried to learn even Christianity. And after I graduated, came back working, got married with the first child, with the kind of difficulties that I bring along, I inherited from my parents, my ancestors. That didn't help in my married life as well. Right? I was impatient, easily get hot-tempered, things like that. And so I even brought my family to attend to church functions, right? It was in a journey of searching, right, spiritually. And during an event where I participated in Asia work, I happened to know a friend who came from a Buddhist association, and she was the one who introduced me to Buddhist teaching. Right? And that was in, I think, year 2006, something like that. And I was lucky in year 2007, near our house, there was a Buddhist association built up. And that was the time really I have the opportunity to participate in listen to Dharma talk, reading about certain sutras, practicing of meditation, right? And in 2009, there was a brother, Brother Cannon, and he happened to be the first person in Malaysia who got to know about Thai teaching. Why we know that? Because when there was a group of Sangha went to Chiang Mai in 2006 to join a retreat, the Sangha were asking, or they have the opportunity to then meet together, those friends from Malaysia who follow Thai teaching. And at that time, they shared a story that when they asked Parallax, could you tell me who else in Malaysia are, following Thai teaching? And Parallax told them, Brother Cannon, because he's the first person who subscribed to Mindfulness Bell. Yeah. So they have the opportunity to meet up, and then when they came back, they tried to organize and invite Thai to come to Malaysia to give teaching in 2010. But before that, in year 2009, Brother Thapkam and 3 other monastic Sangha came to Malaysia on our invitation to organize to have a day of mindfulness in the Buddhist society that is near our place. So, and that was the first time I had the opportunity to know Plum Village practice, and I found it was so practical, so good. And then from then we decided to organize once a month day of mindfulness in the temple. And when in 2010, Thai came with a big convoy of monastic Sangha, 72 of them. Yeah. Thai gave us a bush of energy. He shouted, "Why wait? Build a Sangha." Yeah, and that gave us the energy to then set up a mindfulness practice center the following year in 2011. And from then onwards, we organize twice in a month on Sunday activities. So that was how, in the path of my life, where I faced a lot of challenges from my childhood, and was fortunate enough that I was not lost, but instead trying to search for a way that I can improve myself.
I wonder if you'd like to share how, because many times we see a family coming, and of course your son is living here, he's a monk. So I wonder if you'd like to share how you feel the contact with the community and the practice has changed or transformed the relationships within your family. And
I think the Plum Village practice, as I mentioned earlier, the most important thing is that the practice is always engaged in our daily life. instead of just during our sitting meditation, during our walking meditation, but in every moment of our life, it helps us to bring awareness, help us to be mindful of everything, right? So when we are practicing like that, when we have a lot of difficulties that we bring along, every moment we can see things are manifesting, whether it's around us or whether it's in our mind here. And if we do not have the right tools to practice, to handle all these difficulties, very often we will be trapped by it, right? Especially we have the kind of habit to have most of the time wrong thinking. If wrong thinking manifests because something triggers it, maybe a word from a friend, from our beloved one, our children, we could be, just making up story again and again, non-stop. And it's just like we are being hit by one arrow, think again, repeat the whole cycle of the story, hit by the second arrow, and so on and so forth. So there's so much injury if we don't know how to handle this kind of a situation. So the wonderful thing about Plum Village practice is, especially when I read Thai's books, every word that Thai use is to teach us how to think correctly. How to think correctly. In every situation, there is some words that we can use to change our way of thinking, to switch from a wrong thinking to something right. And when we do that, we are not actually rejecting anything, but we accept whatever comes. But instead of getting upset with whatever manifested, or because of that something that manifested and hurt us, we tend to justify for it, we tend to blame, tend to point fingers to others. Instead of doing that, we pay attention to ourselves and try to look from another angle, right? Just by using what Thai says, right thinking, and to practice right thinking, always we also ask a lot of questions to ourselves, right? And that itself helps. Right? So, and without that practice, I'm sure I will not be able to handle challenges with my children, right? Especially our first child. Being inexperienced parents, we really don't know how to bring up our first child. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of impatience. But with the help of the practice, I was able to communicate instead of using angry words, but with loving words, with words that can open up the children's heart, our children's heart, instead of fighting, right? Instead of giving instruction, instead of telling them not to do this, not to do that, but we are able to listen, and we are able to just show our care and love, and guiding them in that way, but not in a very harsh, that you must follow me to do this and that. And I think the young generation, especially at this time, they will even fight harder, right? So thanks to the practice that I was able to guide. In fact, it's Dayong, to come to Plum Village and have the opportunity to learn the practice and grow up so beautifully. We are very blessed and we are very, very happy. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Shortly we'll bring the session to a close. I know we've all been sitting here, and I just feel very full and nourished by listening to each of you and your experience. But I wonder if, just briefly, maybe just 2 minutes each, just to share, because as monastic Dharma teachers, we are aware, all of us in the monastic community as well as the lay, that we are Thay's continuation. And we, sometimes that's quite a high standard, it's quite daunting, difficult to look at ourselves as a continuation of Thay, considering all the beautiful things that Thay has done in his life. And I wonder if you just have a few inspiring words from what is it that every day inspires you to continue on the path, that brings you joy, that nourishes your own transformation and healing as Dhamma teachers. Because as Dhamma teachers, we also need nourishment, and we need to nourish our body and our mind. So I wonder, just if each person, maybe just 2 minutes, what is the nourishment that you offer yourself each day?
First of all, I express my gratitude for having a home sangha. I live with Dharmacharya, the grandmother of our 6 grandchildren, and it keeps us very young in spirit, the Dharma. We have a beautiful garden not far from us. We don't have television since I don't remember when. But we don't have any free time for vesting time, let's say. So I have 4 sanghas: the home sangha, the Sunday morning sangha in English. At least I don't have to prepare the Chila, and then we have Wednesday sangha, and now that already we started to facilitate now in turns, and I have the prison sangha. And we all the time have other activities, like we just finished the training of 14 session called the wisdom of aging, that we started kind of like, we say, well, when we get buried, then all the denominations can be together. And the interesting thing is the curiosity of others, even those who spent with many years in Buddhism, to meet our materials and our learning experience. So there are people, but there are also mostly women that they never meditated or know anything, and from the last training immediately, for example, have another one coming to the Sangha regularly. So I'm covered with Sanghas, covered with flowers, covered with practicing Tai Chi and Qigong to keep. Since I told you that I don't know how to play football, I was preventing football. So I enjoy being the little child in me practicing Qigong and Tai Chi and other things. I meet a lot of people also, what's called spiritual support, and that's a lot of other things and peace activities.
Thank you.
Okay, I have enough to nourish myself.
Well, one of the most powerful food for me nourishment is beauty in all forms. So there is beauty in nature. Yes, I live in the countryside and I try always to be in nature. There is beauty in the form of art. And it is true, I live in a country where there is abundance of art. But I would say that above all, I receive a lot of nourishment by good relationships. that is relating, as I was telling before, to children in a way that so much aliveness that is in them is really a very, very, very deep nourishment, but also to the people that I meet. And for example, when I am in a retreat also, which I'm supposed to be guiding the retreat, but at the end I discover all the time that I'm not tired at all, that listening and really doing and practicing what Thay has been telling us in such a beautiful way, that when we are one in front of the other and really we at least try to empty ourselves of that, solid thing, there is a flow, there is a flow, I don't know, something which is shared. And I really see that in every human being there is a source of nourishment. So I see that my possibility, my potential is to push the right button so that the beauty, the treasure that is in the other can also nourish me. It's a very subtle thing, but I think that we all can try all the time, so that also we are doubling the effect of the practice, because we are getting nourished, the other is nourished, and we are much better.
Yeah, I think the daily life that I'm living itself is very nourishing, because I've been retired from work, from business for some years. So my life, in the way, there is a lot of freedom. I spend quite a lot of time in study, in some formal practice, and to be able to practice in daily life every moment as well. So that itself brings a lot of harmony with the family members, with friends. In the morning I wake up about 5:30, 6 o'clock. I have my sitting, and I go for a walk. Then I have my first session of breakfast, something light. Then I go for a swim. So all this is very nourishing. Yeah. Have a balanced life, yeah. And in the afternoon I have some study, some reading, Thay's book, other master's book, recommended by Thay. We always have a full faith with Thay's teaching, Thay's guidance. Even when we are not reading Thay's book, we are reading the books recommended by Thay in his references. So that will ensure that we will not be stray, will not go wrong in our learning, in our practice. And take a nap, so free. Yeah, after lunch. Then in the evening, I will have a sitting again, but it's a different practice, right? I may practice, I just sit, read some sutra, a chapter, and I sit on it, right? And go for a walking meditation. And the life is so enjoyable, so free. So
it sounds like a wonderful lifestyle. Eh? maybe some of the monks here could practice like that.
Yeah. My wife sometimes tell me living like a monk. Because every moment, even when I'm having sharing with my children, with my wife, I'm always talking about Dharma. But engage with life. So that itself brings a lot of joy, and I think at the same time, I'm watering seeds in my children as well. That they'll follow the path of this practice, this wonderful way of practice. And I always remind them that when we are in a spiritual path, very important is that we find a right teacher, a teacher that can truly show the right way of practicing, right? Because even when we read Thay's teaching, I always ask myself, am I understanding it correctly? Am I practicing it correctly? So always there's a lot of exploration, a lot of trial and error, reading Thay's book and putting into practice. And when sometimes you find that the practice becomes so helpful, so effective, that itself is a great joy, a lot of joy, a lot of nourishment. And at the same time, the faith for Thay's teaching is increased, right? So it's a process of growing. It's a process of nurturing our spiritual life. And I'm so blessed with the support of my wife, my children, Dayong. All this nourished me a lot in the spiritual life.
Well, thank you all so much for taking this time and opening yourself up and sharing with us how you walk on the spiritual path. Yeah, thank you. Maybe we can show flowers for our lay Dhamma teachers for all that they do to realize the path of the Bodhisattva on this planet with both feet firmly on the Mother Earth. So thank you all for coming, and we'll listen to 3 sounds of the bell to finish, so we can just come back to our breathing, come back to our body, and enjoy this moment together as one Sangha.